like to trust him, but based on his history, it's hard to put trust in him. And he's hired and he's appointed his vice president, Mr. Pence, to kind of spearhead this operation. And of course, Mr. Pence, Vice President Pence, does not have a stellar record in terms of handling things. There was a lot of complaints of how he handled an HIV breakout in his state when he was governor. So, you know, we're going to wait and see. Now, Vicki, I know, you know, this is kind because you fly a lot on your job. What do you think about this situation with the virus?
I think it's frightening. I mean, the reality is we have to get this right. There's just too much at stake to do otherwise. As someone who flies frequently, as in probably 2 or 3 times a month, I think it is particularly frightening and alarming because you don't know how to protect yourself. We hear a lot of information about how deadly this virus can be, but what we're not hearing a lot about is, other than washing your hands, what exactly can we do to try to keep ourselves safe? I would like to make sure that the CDC has the tools that it needs and the funding that it needs to address this deadly virus.
Absolutely, and especially, like you said, when you fly on the plane, and we have international flights, people coming in from all over the world, and unfortunately, people have overreacted, taking out some, you know, discrimination against Chinese folks. You know, the restaurants have been down, thinking just because it started in China that every person of Chinese heritage somehow is connected with the virus, and which is unfair. It's unfair to them. People have been attacked. You know, fools. You know, there's always some fool out there who's going to do something stupid, and they'll attack someone because they're of their ethnicity. You know, and they overreact. So we need to be calm, but like you said, we got to get this right because it can get really out of control. Yeah. Now the other thing, you know, the other big happening is primary season. It's primary season now, at least on the Democratic side. The Republicans, they didn't need to have one. They canceled theirs. Even though there was one guy who wanted to run against Trump, they said, too bad, we're not even going to have a primary. Make sure that some folks can't do a protest vote against you. But the Democratic side, it's been interesting. Bernie Sanders is now the clear front runner, having eked out a contested victory in Iowa. Buttigieg thinks he won. Bernie says he won. He won the popular vote. Mayor Pete got the most delegates. Then he went over to New Hampshire, and Bernie had a convincing victory there. He figures, you know, I got the momentum now. Now he's going to South Carolina, which is Vice President Biden's must-win state. If he's going to be a viable candidate, he's going to have a strong showing in South Carolina, where the majority of Democratic voters happen to be African Americans. So he's staking his political life with the brothers and sisters. What do you think, Vicki? You think he's going to be able to pull it off?
I think he probably will be able to. I think that he will have less margin for that victory than what he may have had early on. But as a whole, I just think in watching the debates, it's just a mess.
It is a mess. I'm telling you. I mean, they're talking over each other. Everyone, you know, they're trying to look strong. If I look strong and yell and scream, you know, maybe someone will think I'm serious. But I guess that's part of the sausage-making process to figure out who's going to survive. Now, of course, California, we got, you know, we're part of the Super Tuesday campaign with everyone, all the other states. I mean, I was truly undecided. I was truly undecided as to who to vote for. My first 3 choices dropped out. You know, Kamala Harris, she was my number 1 choice. I was down with the sister, and then she dropped. I said, all right. Then there was Cory Booker. I said, yeah, you know, Cory, I like Cory. He's a good brother. And then he dropped out. And then, well, you know, I said, well, Julian Castro, you know, he's a good brother. I like him too. He dropped out. So now it's between Tom Steyer, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie. You know, I pulled the trigger, but You know who I ended up voting? I voted, I'll tell you, I voted for Elizabeth Warren. It was a close call. I think she's smart. I think she has good ideas. I like her ideas of the wealth tax. I think the billionaires should get hit with a tax. They'll still be billionaires after they pay the tax, but if that could help underprivileged folks and kids get off to a good start, I think that's good. Because, you know, unfortunately, I won't be charged to pay that billionaire's tax. I wish I could I'd be so happy to pay it, but, you know, I'm a little bit short. But I think that's why I really voted for her. I liked her program. Now, whether or not she can make it, I'm not so sure. But she's intelligent, and I like intelligent politicians.
I agree with you. I mean, she has some good ideas. I do think that on the last debate, she was more in the attack mode than she was in explaining her ideas. And when she does explain the ideas and how she plans to get there, they're strong. But I think there are a lot of different candidates, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses. And the issue to me will be, at the end of the day, who can defeat our current president?
That's true, and that's going to be the key. Whether or not you get the people out to vote in those swing states, because you know it all comes down to 4 or 5 states. You know, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Florida. You know, if you know, because the rest of the states are going to be pretty well divided up. And those are the states which will probably swing the election. Now, are the Democrats smart enough, which I somewhat doubt, to really galvanize the vote in those states? You know, quit spending money where you don't need to. It's like studying, not like studying for a test, studying what you already know. No, study what you don't know. You know, get out there and register some folks and try to galvanize some folks. And it depends a lot if they get, you know, for the VP, if Bernie or Biden or whoever wins, they better put a woman or a person of color or both on the ticket to get some folks enthused about voting. Because if it's a low turnout, Lord help us.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the key is turnout at this point, and we have to be united. We are not right now. I do think that we are not only smart enough, but we need to be organized enough to get out the vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, because they asked me to, you know, send money, and I wrote them a letter saying, look, I'll send you money, but are you going to use it for voter outreach? You know, get some of these folks who aren't registered. I don't want to hear, oh, they purged 200,000 folks. Well, then get them registered again. Just because they were purged, that means they didn't vote last time, so register again. There's not a law against re-registering the vote. So, you know, if they do that, if they do the groundwork, and folks who, you know, if you help someone register, they're going to remember who helped them register to vote. And they're more likely to vote the way you want them to vote. So, we'll see. But let's take a break. We'll come back, and we'll talk a little bit more about with our special guest tonight about her incredible career. So, you're with Doug Oden with Law and Money, and we'll be right back.
Who was Edward William Anderson? Edward William Anderson was born September 26, 1871.
You sound like you've been doing this a long time.
Anderson, who were former slaves
yeah,
in
probably
Hobsonville,
second
Kentucky.
year.
He
Oh
came
my
to San Diego,
gosh.
California in the mid-1890s with just $1.25 in his pocket. His first successful business,
My
IXL Laundry,
goodness.
was the largest
So
thin
did you always
laundry
want to
in
be
the
a DJ or
region,
something?
with 35
I don't know.
employees. In
This Leonard, he talked
1897,
me into it.
Edward
Oh
and
my
his wife
gosh.
Mary sued for and won a $50 lawsuit against the Elegant Fisher Opera House when they were denied the orchestra seats that they had paid for to see the play around the world in 80 days.
And I
This
think
suit
Elizabeth
set legal
overplayed her
precedent
hand
as the
beating
first
up on
racial discrimination
on,
court case of its
Bloomberg.
kind in Southern
The first time was
California.
okay. The
Right.
In
second time was like, okay, we've
1919,
heard that.
he co-founded the San Diego
Outside.
branch of the NAACP
Cut that.
Yeah.
and served 3 terms as the president between 1931 and 1943.
That was my only thing.
He was a
with her, so I
member
just
of
don't
several
know.
prominent leagues in the
I
city.
don't like
In
Bloomberg.
1943, he also launched Anderson Mortuary, now known as Anderson Ragsdale Mortuary, which continues to
why
serve
you
the
ask me that
community
question?
today.
Yeah.
I'm
Edward
thinking
W.
that.
Anderson
I've never
died
been
on
talked to
August
like
11,
that before.
1953 in San Diego, and is interred in Mount Hope Cemetery. This moment in Black history is sponsored by Sam Taylor, author of Money Matters. How to be a good steward of your finances.
should have known better.
He should have, yeah.
I mean,
Have
I
you
get
been in
it,
a car
but
accident?
he
Feel
may,
like he's
you know,
helping
end
you?
up being the person,
About to
whoever
leave
the
your
person
house?
is, I
Your
am going
car?
to vote for them.
If so,
If he's
you
the,
need to
yeah,
contact
I'll go out and
the
vote for
Odin
him.
and Green.
Anybody,
Oldest
anybody
African
but
law
Trump.
firm. For over 35
I don't
years,
notice
the
anything like
offices of
this.
Odin and Green
Yeah.
have provided quality legal services
Make
for the
America great
community.
again, and y'all.
They pride themselves in giving each and every
You wanna make it
client
good again, do
individual
it again.
attention. They are located at 701 B Street,
That's
Suite
hard.
540 in downtown San Diego. Call them now at
How many been in that location? You've been there a while.
619-702.
About 10 years ago.
That's
Yeah.
619-702.
2012, I think. we were there, yeah.
0800.
2012.
I know that you
Hmm.
experience
got
matters.
3 more years.
Y
I'm
habla
out.
español.
You gonna practice memories?
3 more,
From
yeah.
the Voice and Viewpoint newspaper.
I'm not gonna make
San
it that
Diego's
long.
oldest
I
and
don't
largest
know how much
African-American
longer,
publication.
that seems like
I
We bring
think,
you news
yeah.
for
I
and about our
know, it's
community.
like
So
doing
you're
Your
gonna go for
stories
like
matter to
45
us.
years?
Thank you for allowing us to serve
It's
you
just
for
this
nearly
last
6
lease. We had 3
decades.
years on
Your
this last
support
lease.
enables us to
and it
continue to
started.
forge ahead,
So I said,
informing you
after
with
that
news
lease, I'm
tailored
not
to your
renewing.
needs. In addition to
calling it a
subscribing
career.
to our weekly
Ready or
publication,
not.
consider using
You've
Voice
had
and
a long
Viewpoint to
career.
promote your boarding
Yes,
center
I'm at
events.
38.
Call us at
That's a long time.
619-266-2233 or send an email to ads@sdvoice.info for details on how to get started. If you have advertising needs, contact us. Our prices are both fair and reasonable. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Voice and Viewpoint or visit our website at www.sdvoice.info. Remember, a people without a voice cannot be heard.
Welcome back to Law and Money with Attorney Douglas Soden. My special guest tonight, once again, is Vicki Turner. Let me tell you a little bit about this incredible lady. Now, she's a partner with Wilson Turner Cosmo. She's been an attorney for 37 years and experiencing complex litigation that matters that are filed against corporations with extensive emphasis in the areas of product liability, warranties, and class actions. She has successfully defended manufacturers, distributors, and retailers in complex product liability claims throughout California and 12 western states. She's represented a wide array of companies in the defense of torts and business disputes. Throughout her career, she has actively participated in lengthy mediations, arbitrations, and defended numerous class action lawsuits. Her outstanding trial skills have earned her national recognition. Now, she's a humble person, but I have to tell you a little bit about her honors and recognition. She's been a recipient of the Women's Dedication Award from the Salvation Army for outstanding humanitarian work. She's been declared one of the best lawyers in San Diego Product Liability Defense Lawyer of the Year in 2012, named one of the women to impact San Diego in 2016. I think you were probably in the Union Tribune on that one. I think I remember seeing that. Selected Woman of the Year from the 79th Assembly District in 2015. She's been recognized as one of the best lawyers in America from 2010 through 2020. She's part of the acclaimed Super Lawyers list from 2007 to 2019, and she's received the San Diego Trial Lawyers Outstanding Trial Lawyers Award. And I could go on, but she's just a superstar attorney and a good friend of mine, and we need to know a little bit about how you got to be such an outstanding attorney. Now, I understand you're from Las Vegas, Nevada?
Well, I'm originally from Gainesville, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
And I spent most of my early years traveling. My father was in the Air Force, so I spent many of my years across the United States. I spent 3 years in Okinawa when I was younger. And our last duty station when I was in high school and middle school was Las Vegas.
Oh, okay. Now, do you have siblings?
I have one brother who's 10 years younger than me.
Okay. So, your parents, did they stress education growing up?
Very much so. Both of my parents always insisted that I would go to college. There was no doubt about that, and from the early days, I remember even when I was in the 4th grade having to do my multiplication tables before I could eat, so they definitely stressed it.
Okay. Were you one of those real smart students in high school?
I was one of those students that worked really hard in high school and got good grades as a result.
Okay. You were one of those, huh? So did you get a scholarship to UNLV, or did you?
I did. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, and so I was very fortunate to finish. I finished 3rd in my class, and we had 750 students from high school, and I got a full ride to UNLV, which was right there in Las Vegas, the only school I applied to, because I really didn't know much about colleges. Didn't know a lot of people who'd gone to college, so I applied to the one school that was right there in Las Vegas where I was living, and was fortunate to get a full academic scholarship.
Now, what was your major?
I majored in accounting, and I should say that was my final major, because I majored in a number of different things and then decided, what if I have enough credits to actually graduate it? So my ultimate degree was in accounting.
Okay. Now, when you went there, was there a good number of African American students at UNLV?
No, we were a very small percentage, but we did something during my first year at the school that was really, I think, impressive for us, and impressed upon me the importance of having a family, a group of people to support you. And that was the Alpha Kappa Alpha chapter there came to us, and the graduate chapter, and asked us to form the first AKA line at UNLV. The same year the Kappas were formed. And so it was the first time that we had African American sororities and fraternity on our campus. So I was fortunate to be one of the original 12 that founded the AKA line at UNLV.
Okay. So there were white fraternities at the school?
There were many.
Oh, okay.
There were many.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So what, after you graduated, what led you to go to law school?
Well, when I finished undergraduate, I did what my major would suggest. I worked as an accountant, and I worked as an accountant for a short while in a large accounting firm, and after the first tax season, when people brought in their receipts literally in boxes, and we had to figure out their lives, I decided that really was not for me. So I left to do something a little bit more exciting. I joined the Gaming Control Board in Las Vegas, and I worked as an auditor during the day, and at night we were assigned to work undercover. So I would actually work with someone in the enforcement division. They would have a gun, I had a badge, and we would go in and we would do things like, we could walk into a drop room and ask for for them to calibrate the machines in front of us, to show us that the money was being calculated properly. We could ask for them to open a slot machine and calibrate the cylinders so we know that people were not being cheated. The whole point of it is, as you know, there's no state tax in the state of Nevada, no personal tax. And so the casinos pay a great deal of the taxation, so you had to make sure that they were properly reporting it. Now, did we believe we were catching everything? Absolutely not, but at least we're making it much more honest.
Well, that's very interesting. So were you able to catch someone doing some nefarious things?
No. So after a year and a half of that, I decided there must be something else I can do with my life, and I decided I wanted to stop doing accounting. It really wasn't something I enjoyed. I had a friend who was going to law school here in San Diego, and he suggested I come and look at, audit some of the classes with him and just see if I thought I'd like to do it. So I actually came to San Diego for a visit. I went to Cal Western School of Law, and I sat in on a couple of classes, and I thought, oh, I can do this. But he and I were very competitive, so I didn't want to go to the same school where he was attending. So I applied to University of San Diego School of Law and was absolutely amazed when I was accepted into the school.
Mm. Now, that's a fairly expensive school to go to, or did you get a scholarship?
I was fortunate to get a full academic scholarship to go to USD. I have always worked really hard on having good grades.
Smart people get scholarships for folks. Like, you teach your kids that. You get good grades, folks will pay you to go to college. You're an average student, you get a loan. So that's good. That's fantastic. So you went to law school and graduated, and you were on law review.
I was very fortunate to be on law review.
Now, for folks who don't know what law review is, tell us, it's a prestigious position. Tell us, why is it that, and what does law review consist of?
Well, typically, in order to get onto law review, you either have to write onto law review or you grade onto it. So usually it's the people who are in the top of the class. And what's really wonderful about it is it gives you an opportunity to be published, to actually write an article that gets published. You do the research, you write the article during law school, and it's very well respected and very helpful to future employment.
Right. Now, the USD have a law journal?
Yes.
And so your topic was part of that each year they have a journal, and then your particular publication would be in it.
Yes, yes,
Alright.
yes. And it was a good, it's almost like having, I don't wanna call it a club, but it's a small group of people each year that make law review, and then you stay on law review while you're still in law school.
Right. Do you remember the topic that you wrote on?
I remember it was related to immigration, but I don't remember exactly what it was. That was, let's just say, a few years ago.
Yeah, a couple of years. So you graduated from law school. Now, did you have any idea when you graduated what area of law you wanted to get involved in?
I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I graduated from law school. Unfortunately, the world didn't work out that way for me. My plan when I went to law school was to be a civil rights attorney, and I wanted to work for the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. And I interviewed. I got a position, an offer to do exactly that when I finished law school. But President Reagan had different ideas and dismantled the funding for that particular section of the U.S. Department of Justice at the time. And my offer was changed from the Civil Rights Division to the Civil Division. I still could have gone to D.C., but it wasn't what I had in mind. So I had already worked as a summer associate for Luce Forward, Hamilton & Scripps, which at the time was the second largest San Diego-based law firm. They had already extended an offer for me to return when I graduated from law school. So I decided if I'm simply going to do civil work, I would stay here in San Diego and do it with a large law firm. So the world changed, and I did something different.
Now, of course, being one of those smart individuals, I assume you passed the bar the first time.
I worked very hard, and I passed the bar the first time, yes.
I worked very hard and didn't pass the bar the first time. However, but that's another story. No, I understand, and because a lot of times there's a lot of pressure, especially when you get accepted into a law firm pending the results of the bar. So a lot of times, folks, they say, "Oh, I got a job offer," and then they don't keep their eye on the prize, come up short on the bar examination, and they say, no.
Well, I can tell you the stress level is extremely high when you have an offer. And in my situation, there were 12 people in my class, meaning when I started at the law firm, they gave an offer to 12 people, and all of us needed to pass the bar. So we would all come in together. I didn't want to be the one of the 12 that did not pass the bar.
Right.
And all of us did pass.
Okay, good. Now, when you showed up at Luce Forward, how many other African Americans were there?
There was one other African American when I came to the firm, and they left the next year, which then left me for a while.
Was the person a partner or associate?
Associate. I'm the only, as far as I know, African American who was ever a partner at Luce Forward, Hamilton & Scripps.
Okay, well, that's a tease, good folks. We're going to take a break, come back, we're going to find out about her experience in that large, prestigious law firm. And you're with GOD Radio 1 with Law and Money, Attorney Douglas Oden, with our special guest, Vicki Turner.
Born December 23rd, 1867.
Hey.
Sarah Friedman,
We're halfway through
better
her.
known as Madam C.J. Walker, was lauded
It
as
does
the
go
first black
fast,
woman
though.
millionaire in America. For her
Yeah, so
successful
you
line
learn
of
things you didn't know
hair
about me,
products.
huh?
I'll
In
tell you,
Walker,
working
who had been
behind the
losing her hair,
game.
sought a treatment for the
Oh, I
condition.
hated that.
She invented a line of African
Yeah, they would
American
give you
hair
$5
products
because
that she
one of the
promoted by
requirements of the
traveling
job
around the
is you
country,
could not gamble
giving
in your
lectures
personal life,
and
which I'm not a
demonstrations.
gambler anyway.
She established
They would
Madam
give you
C.J. Walker
$5 to gamble
Laboratories
at night,
to
and
manufacture
you, I'm
cosmetics
standing there
and train
for
sales
4 hours
beauticians
with $5.
using her
You know
Walker
how far
method,
it goes.
involving her
Everybody knew
formula
we
for
were
pomade
agents.
and using her
Look at those guys. They're like, got $5.
opened her first beauty school in Pittsburgh.
Now,
and
they say
transferred
you
her
couldn't
business to
gamble
Indianapolis.
outside the casino or
You
no?
can't gamble in your personal life, only with the $5 they gave you when you're working undercover, because you could be bribed.
This moment in Black
True.
history is sponsored by Janet
Well, you
Pearson
can be
Miller,
bribed even if you don't
owner of
gamble,
Heritage
yeah.
and
but
Glorious
essentially
Men's
you can
Salon.
Yeah.
Customized hair alternatives
yeah.
for
But I
everyday
also
women.
I'll gamble even today. It
be.
just,
Okay.
I saw some bad
If you're an
stuff.
artist that needs artwork, social media designs, or marketing designs,
Yeah, I've been
such
on
as
the
emails,
on the crap
newsletters, or
table.
communications,
Oh,
rush
yeah.
orders
I have
are
seen
no
people
problem.
literally
They
hold
guarantee
their
that 48
wiped
to
out
72
phone,
hour
try to rip
turnaround
their
on
purse
any
away
design.
from them.
In1 Services is
Bad
the
stuff,
one-stop
bad
shop.
stuff.
Check them out at www.in1services.com. That's
They wasn't black.
in1services.com.
That would have been a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Have you been in a car
You
accident?
gonna put me on the
Feel
floor?
like
No,
it's
you won't.
about to leave your house, your
Hold my
car
purse while I come.
itself, we need
Yeah.
to
No, I mean,
the
it's-
offices of Odin and Green.
The thing is about gambling, especially with the slot machines, they're programmed to take your money.
For over 35
So-
years,
Well,
the
they
law
can be
firm
programmed
of Odin
even
and
better to
Green
take your
have
money.
provided
It's not
all
calibrated
legal
right,
services
which is
for
what we
workers.
were trying to
They
prevent.
patent
The cylinders have to roll freely.
They are
Well, when
located at
sometime.
001 Beach Suite
Yeah.
540
And
in
then I never, I
downtown
think,
San Diego. Call them
I
now
saw too much.
at
Here we go.
619-702-0800. That's 619-702-0800. At Odin and Green, experience matters. Y habla español.
Welcome back to Law and Money with my special guest, Ms. Vicki Turner. When we last, before we took the commercial break, we were talking about your experience at Loose Forward Hamilton and Scripps, and that you were one of the first African American partners. I remember when you were working there because you had that big fro back in the day.
I did.
And I was so proud of you. I said, no, this sister girl, she in this big white firm, and she is authentic. She had the Angela Davis fro and was sporting, and I said, go on now.
You know, it's funny because that was my personal statement. I started in the firm in 1982. I made partner in 1989, and I did not take my afro down until after they made me partner. I wanted to make sure I made that statement, and I was pleased that the firm accepted me the way I was.
Okay. Now, when you started a big firm like that, you know, as a rookie, basically, you start doing like the grunt work in terms of interrogatories and stuff? How does that work?
Well, the one wonderful thing about the firm was it was like a training process where you would actually rotate between departments. So the very first year, you spent a little bit of time in all the departments within the firm, and you had an opportunity to learn and see what you were interested in doing. So yes, you're starting out doing work that frankly you are capable of doing, but you still need to learn. I mean, as you know, in law school, you don't really learn how to practice law. You learn a lot about theory, but the actual, how you create documents and what you exactly do is not something you necessarily learn, at least back in those days. We have more practical skills courses in law schools now. So I started out and I worked in a number of different departments, including personal injury plaintiff side, family law, and to a number of different ones. I landed in product liability and never had a product liability class before, but I really enjoyed it and decided this is where I want to be. And fortunately, the firm had a need for someone in that department.
Okay, yeah. Now, product liability from on the defense side is you're representing folks people who have made claims against a product, saying that either that product caused them some harm. And sometimes it's one plaintiff, and sometimes there's a number of plaintiffs, correct?
No, not exactly. I would be representing the company that made the product, where someone is claiming that that product injured them. We very rarely represent individuals. It's almost always representing a corporation, working with the engineers and the designers of the product to understand how it functions and why.
Right. So you represent the manufacturer of the product, and your task is to prove that, number one, it did not cause the harm, or it was manufactured according to acceptable standards.
I like to think that my task is to evaluate how the product performed. And in doing so, we're going to determine whether it was defective or not defective. But I start out from, a very objective position of, let's find out more about the product and how it performed in this situation and what it should have done versus what it did. And so sometimes we will conclude the product did not perform the way it should. And in those situations, we try to resolve the case. In some situations, we determine the product performed the way that it was designed to perform, and we defend those cases.
Now, to do that, you have to work closely with the company itself, their, I guess, their R&D or their research department, and do you actually go to their plant or whatever, or do they, how does that work?
Well, there's a little bit of both. You work very closely with engineers. I mean, on all the cases that I'm involved in, I have engineers, biomechanics, a number of different types of people that work with me. So there's a lot of engineering, there's a lot of science that goes into it. Yes, we go to the manufacturing facilities when that's required. We sometimes go to test grounds to see how things are being tested, and we sometimes participate in those tests. But there's a lot that goes into it, and I've learned a lot, for example, about metallurgy, something I'd never heard of before. So it's just a lot of engineering involved.
And you know, being on the defense side, from a player's point of view, it seems like the defense always has the monetary advantage, because I mean, you get to work with the engineers, the plaintiffs still have to go out and hire an expert. And it's a great investment. So unless the harm to the person was somewhat catastrophic, it's really not cost effective to bring those product liability cases. You know, certainly if you have a car that, you know, you're alleging that there was, let's say, unintended acceleration and that resulted in a death, certainly, you know, because of the potential reward, it's worth doing that investment. But, you know, if someone has some toothpaste and then all of a sudden they say, oh, I got a rash because of the toothpaste, and it cleared up in a month or two, you know, you're not going to fight the toothpaste company trying to, you know, figure out why that rash occurred.
Well, in those situations, you may not want to file an actual lawsuit, but I would certainly encourage you to certainly contact the company and advise them of whatever your thoughts are on how the product performed, because that's how products improve.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's simply knowing that a product can do something that doesn't even lead to a lawsuit, that can make it better for everyone else.
Right. Now, in those situations, would they give you a consolation prize? Hey, thank you for telling us that, and we'll give you $500.
But it's not the $500 that's important, it's that the company will take that item back or that issue and consider it. And if it makes an improvement on it, that's great. That's great for other people.
Well, it's great for the consumer and
Right.
great for the public in general, right? So you worked for Luce for a while in the product liability, and you started learning some expertise. At some point, you decided that perhaps you wanted to. You and I guess some other individuals decided, let's do our own thing.
Well, I stayed with Loose Forward for 16 years, 6 years as an associate and 10 years as a partner. And probably about year 14, I thought I'd like to do something else, but I really didn't know what else I wanted to do. And I was really fortunate to have a very good friend, several very good friends that were in law firms that encouraged me to do something in a smaller environment. And Regina Petty, Glennet Wilson, I'd known them since I started practicing law, and they came to me and talked to me about joining them, because at the time, you know, they had a small firm right across the street from where I was already practicing, and they already had an interest in were doing some product liability work. So I went to see them. It took me a couple of years to say, okay, I feel comfortable leaving the comfort of a big firm and going to a small firm.
And the comfort of a big check.
The comfort of a large firm, going to a small firm. But you know, I had 3 children and my husband, so
Yes.
everyone was very supportive.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's a big decision, because also, you know, it's a financial investment, because when you leave a firm and you know you don't have to talk about your compensation, but obviously when you're a partner in one of the largest firms in town, you're doing okay, which is good. But when you make that transition, all of a sudden you're going from a firm where there's a secured, I guess basically a secured compensation stream, to a situation where you're investing in yourself and your partners to start a new venture. Wasn't that kind of scary?
It was extremely scary. And I'll tell you the thing that really made a difference. When as a partner and you're going from one firm to the other, you cannot ask your clients to go with you until you have left the first firm. But you can tell them that you are leaving. You have an obligation to tell them that you are leaving. And I'll tell you, it made all the difference in the world to how nervous I was about leaving. I told my client, who was Ford Motor Company, a young lady by the name of Allison Nelson, that I was going to be leaving the firm. And she said, "Where are we going?" So to know that Ford was coming with me made all the difference in the world.
Right, so you're able to take a major client with you, so you know that you had some work to do initially, and that you had a stream of income coming in. So when you partnered up with that new firm, now what was the name of the firm initially when you started up?
When I started, it was Wilson, Petty, Dunwoody, and Turner.
Okay.
They added me to the name immediately.
All right, so you were one of the founding members of that firm. That's great, and that's fantastic. So you now did you guys have associates when you started, or was it just?
Yes, I mean the firm was already in existence.
Right.
They simply added my name to it as a partner.
Okay.
So we had, I don't remember how many lawyers there were. We were small at the time, and then we just continued to grow and ultimately changed our name to what it is now.
Okay, right. Well, that's great. And we're gonna take another break because we only got much time left. We got about 20 minutes left, and we got a lot more to cover. With Douglas Oden and our special guest Vicki Turner on Law and Money.
It's just
Fresh
catching my
Faced
ear.
Club, a brand that affirms. A
This
brand that
really
encourages.
goes fast.
I'm telling you.
Wow.
Yeah. A brand designed to give voice
When it gets to
message
7:50, I'm gonna
We are Fresh
talk about
Faced
your
Club,
foundation.
spreading the
We'll
love.
give you a good chance to.
Check out our website,
Tell us about that.
freshfaith.com.
Yeah.
Without the E,
Well, you know what?
FR,
Foundation is one thing, and I'll talk about that,
faith.com.
The
but
STEM?
my
Positive
STEM
and
program, that's my
creative
love.
apparel
Okay.
for
That's
men,
my love.
women,
What's that
and
called?
children That makes
Links
a
to
bold
STEM.
statement. Tomorrow's
Links
not
to
promised.
STEM? It's the
When we
links?
boast in the name of the Lord,
Yeah, but I
we
founded
make
it. I
Jesus
brought it to them and I
famous.
ran it.
Join in
I
the
know.
movement with Fresh Faith
I
Clothing.
love my
For
children.
more
I
information,
know you do.
call 858-650-3190, extension 303.
How your grandchildren doing?
I'm gonna have a fourth grandchild. He'll be born in June. So they're
Alright.
3 boys and 1 girl.
Dr. Dorothy Smith was born in a rural area of Memphis, Tennessee, to Reverend and Miss Theodore White, and graduated as valedictorian in 1957 from Weekly High School. She has earned a bachelor
And
and a
yes, I
master's
worked very
degree,
hard.
both in English and
Yeah, she did.
nutrition,
I know
and
you
a
were
doctorate
on
in educational leadership from the U.S.
Okay,
What
there
is
it is.
it?
It came
Smith
down.
was the
I got
first
Is
it.
it?
African-American
Man,
woman
Miss
to be
Turner, you
elected
got
to
an
public
A.
office in the city of
And she
San
was
Diego,
number
and
3.
served as a board member for
Yeah,
San
I
Diego
was
Unified
number 1.
Schools
Oh, then I didn't do
from
as well.
1981 to
See?
1982.
I went to
She has
Madison
won
down the street
several
when it was,
awards from
it
throughout
was
the year for the past 16
80%
years,
white.
such as
Wow.
Board
I
Member,
was not number
President,
3. I was
Documentary,
not number
and
1.
Chief Volunteer.
I was in the
Dr.
pack.
Smith is a folded
I'll
and
tell you.
member
I just, it
of
made me
Alpha
work
Kappa
on, I
Alpha
went to
Sorority
Einstein, they told me
Incorporated,
in, go
and is the
home.
recipient of
Oh.
And
numerous
that's when I said,
educational
okay,
awards.
it's on
This
now.
moment in
Yeah.
Black history has been sponsored by
We're gonna
Women
take it all.
Influence California, an organization dedicated to
My
encouraging
son,
women
my
to
son
be the
went to
salt
USC
and
on
light
a
of the world.
scholarship.
Please visit our
I'm so
Facebook
happy.
page,
I just wrote my
Women
last
Influence
tuition check.
California,
I'm
to
telling
learn
everybody
about our
that. I've been
vision
paying
and to
tuition
see
for college
dates for
one
our
or another since
upcoming luncheon.
2002. He's graduating in May.
Have you been in the park today?
What was his degree?
About
His
to
Finishing
your
medical
house?
school.
Your
Okay,
car?
medical school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
His
you
undergrad
need
was
to contact the
USC
law
in
school of
chemistry.
Oakland.
He figured out which field he wants to go into.
He wants to be a geriatrologist.
For over 35
so
years,
dual
the
senior
law schools of
citizens.
Odin and Green
Ah.
have provided
And
quality
he
legal
didn't have
services for the community.
loans.
They pride themselves in
Look
giving
at those.
each and every client individual
I
attention.
tell you
They
that.
are located at 701 B Street,
I'm like,
Suite
I'm
540,
turning.
in downtown San
I
Diego.
had a partial
Call them
scholarship
now
in law
at
school.
619
25%.
702
Every penny counts.
Tell me.
I couldn't have gone to school.
619
He had no
702
money for
Yeah,
school.
well, it's $50 a unit.
I know that
Here we go.
experience
That was a good old days.
I know. I couldn't even afford that though.
I know. We're back with Law and Money with my special guest, Ms. Vicki Turner. She tell us about her transition from one of the major law firms to joining up with some other folks and starting her own law firm. Now, once you started, then I noticed that it grew kind of quickly because you start off with probably, what, 10 attorneys maybe?
A little bit less, around that, yes.
Okay, and now how many folks do you have?
Now we have, I believe, at last count, maybe 36, could be 38, who started this week. Attorneys and a large number of support staff.
Right, I think you have a beautiful office facility. I was fortunate enough to come check it out. Yeah, you guys are doing great. Now you've expanded from 4. That was one of your clients, and now you have a number of clients in a lot of states. Now, how does that work? I mean, I know attorneys can practice, from one state to another, but you can't do too much in one particular state without having to take the bar. How do you folks maneuver that if you have to litigate a case outside California?
Well, many cases don't go to trial. They get litigated right up to the court and actually don't go into court in terms of trial. So what we do is we have local counsel in various jurisdictions that we work with. And when you get to the point of actually needing to do a trial, then you pro-hack in, and then you're able to try it along with the person who's licensed in that state. But fortunately, a lot of the litigation that's behind the scenes prior to trial, you can do with the assistance of local counsel.
Local counsel, right. And that's pro hac vice, is that what it's
Yes.
called? Right. That's a Latin phrase meaning, you can play with us for a little while, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's great. So now the class action lawsuits, we hear a lot about those. Now, in my experience, they don't go to trial very often. They usually settle it. If the plaintiff's main goal, number one, I believe, is to get it certified as a class, and then survive the motion game, the summary judgment motions, and then at that point, is it like, let's talk, or what?
Well, if the class gets certified, then typically both sides will want to sit down and talk.
Right.
I mean, certification is the big battle in a class motion.
And for those who are unfamiliar with the certification process, that just means, well, I'll let you tell us, what is the certification process?
Well, it means you actually have a class, because up until the time when the court says, yes, this is a class, you can move forward representing this group of people, it really isn't a class. It's a putative class, and only the people who are the named plaintiffs are actually the representatives. So there is a big difference from having, 1 or 2 people as a named plaintiff versus now having potentially hundreds or thousands of people who are certified as a class to now be plaintiffs.
And the courts look at whether that the claims of the masses are similar.
Yes.
And that so much so that rather than have, 2,000 or 50,000 individual cases, let's consolidate it into one case, since the issues are similar, the claims are similar, and therefore the ruling would affect them all in a similar fashion. And are those some of the factors for certification? I don't know them all.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's really what the court is looking at, is judicial efficiency and having all the cases heard together as opposed to separate individual claims that may not individually support economically filing individual lawsuits.
Okay. Now, on the defense side, is it what you're trying to show is, number one, that the claims shouldn't be certified because they're different, there's a number of claims I guess you would argue that are not similar.
That's one of the things that you're trying to show, and sometimes we're trying to show that there really isn't a basis for the claim to begin with. I mean, simply because someone brings a claim doesn't mean that there's a validity to it.
Okay, and that's one of in other words, the court has to make a ruling that the claim is meritorious.
Yes.
Okay. What's the standard? Is it more likely than not, or preponderance of evidence? What does the judge?
Well, the judge looks at a number of factors, and the nice thing about it is each case is a little bit different. And sometimes we start out by just indicating, for example, in cases where there's some personal injury involved, it's very difficult to get a class certified. So we may say, the plaintiff may say they want a class certified for one purpose, but for damages, you go out and you do it individually. So you may say, we're only certified for this purpose and not for another purpose. There are a number of different ways to approach it.
Okay. And does your firm do a significant amount of class action stuff?
We do a large amount of class action work, on the employment side, consumer side, which is primarily what I do, and warranty as well.
Now, on the employment side, was that like wage and hours type situation?
Some wage and hour, a lot of wage and hour class actions.
Mm.
That's extremely popular, as you know, in California.
Well, good. Okay, fairly lucrative, huh?
Well, it's a lot of work. I'll say that much for it.
Right.
It's a lot of, and it's complicated because there's so many different facets.
Right. And a lot of these complex litigations, you have referees appointed,
Correct.
discovery referees.
Well, more importantly, I think you typically will have, for example, you might have cases that are consolidated into one jurisdiction. You may have them in complex litigation courts, like in Los Angeles, it's in complex litigation. Or you might have multiple multi-district litigation where it's all consolidated into one if it's in federal court. So it just depends on your jurisdiction.
So when you go to the courtroom, there'll be a whole bunch of folks with briefcases.
There very well can be. I've gone to some hearings and there may be, a number of judges or a number of lawyers who are on the phone and a number of lawyers who are in the court, and you all have different interests, but there's something similar about all of them.
And then they go down, they call the roll, everyone has to introduce themselves and who they represent.
That's right.
Yeah, now it's high stake gambling for the plaintiffs because they have to invest a lot of money.
Well, it's high stakes for the defendants too, because that means that whatever their product or whatever they're defending is on the line, and their reputation as a company is on the line.
Right. So that puts a lot of pressure on you folks as the defense counsel to protect their interests and to do it right.
That's correct, and I'll tell you, we have very sophisticated clients who are hands-on. They understand the stakes.
And I hear these days they're kind of budget conscious too.
Extremely budget conscious, so everyone understands the stakes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, look, let's. Your career is so fabulous, and we're so proud of you because there's not too many African Americans who deal with the high stake complex litigation, especially in San Diego, and you inspire a lot of people. Now, what would you tell young law students? Would you encourage them to get involved in product liability?
Absolutely. I would encourage them to get involved as a lawyer and then find your passion.
Right.
You have to do something you really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. And you have to be willing to work hard because it is hard work. After 40 years of practicing law, one thing you realize is it is hard work, and sometimes you stay late. You get up early and you stay late, and the stakes are high because as a plaintiff's lawyer, you have people's livelihood in terms of their health. They've lost, they've been injured, they can't work, and they're looking to you for some type of redress. And in your situation, you have companies whose brand and the future of their employees are dependent upon you getting a result that's favorable to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we have a couple minutes left, and not only are you an outstanding lawyer, you do things outside the practice of law. I don't know how you find the time, but you do. And you're telling me that one of your joys in life is working with a STEM program called Links to STEM.
It is. And the Links to STEM program was started through our local Links chapter. I came to the chapter 6 years ago and said, please, let's consider doing a STEM program for African American children. I think it's important that we start at a very young age to expose our children to science, technology, engineering, and math so that they will be ready for the careers of the future. And so we started the program 6 years ago. Each year we have approximately 35 students in our program. We meet on Saturdays, 3 hours every other Saturday, year-round. We send our students on field trips. We send them to summer camps that are STEM-related. And the idea is they will start with us in the 4th or 5th grade, and they will stay with us until they finish the 8th grade. When they are in the 7th and 8th grade, they are part of our competitive robotics team, and I'm gonna take a moment and brag.
Go ahead.
Because this year, we won first place, tournament league champions, and we were the only diverse team. So I'm very pleased with that. We are part of the first Lego League.
Whoa, okay. So now you start them real early. I didn't realize you started them so young.
The idea is so that students will not be afraid of
Right.
science and math. We start them off every Saturday morning with a math brain teaser, just to warm them up before they get into science. And they do science for about another hour and a half. That's done by Dr. Akilah Weber. And they take a snack break. And then they are taught robotics programming by a group of amazing coaches who are volunteers from our from our community who come in and work with our students.
Now, how would if someone had a child and they expired, or they wanted the child to get involved in it, how would they do that?
This is the time to do it. If they're entering the 4th or 5th grade, we have just extended applications. It is very simple. You can reach out to me because I actually do the recruiting. We also have a website. If you log on to the San Diego Links website, you will see the application for students. You can also contact me through my email address, which is very simple. You can Google my name and my email will come up. It's very easy to find. And it's all you do is apply. Now let me tell you, we want students who are interested. It doesn't matter how much the parent earns. The cost of this program is $50 for the entire year per child. We pay for the camps, we pay for everything that the child does once they're in the program.
Is there a waiting list?
There's a waiting list every year actually to get in, and what we do is on April 4th, we will be having an introduction where we explain to prospective parents what the program is all about, and then we will interview the parent and the child and select children at that point, because in June we send the new class to the first summer camp.
How is it funded?
It is funded by me asking everyone that I know. And we have some amazing sponsors like SDG&E, Cox.
Okay.
We're really blessed to have CVS, a number of sponsors who've come on board and helped to support our program.
Have you received, have the TV stations came out and done some special thing here?
Not yet, but we've been real supported by other entities.
Okay.
Union Bank, US Bank.
Okay, well, we may wanna see if we can get, I mean, would you like to have News 8 or Channel 10, Channel 7, Channel 5 to come out and, cause they like to do soft news, on the weekends and stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We certainly encourage that.
Okay, we'll have to look into that, cause, I'm very encouraged because, like you say, a lot of young people aren't exposed to the world of science and the way, technology and, Silicon Valley, high tech, robotics, that's the wave of the future. And just to get their minds, that they know that, hey, I can do this.
Yes,
Right.
and to see people who look like them who are doing it.
Right.
Our engineers are 3 African American young men, Stanford graduate, MIT graduate, and USD graduate, all engineers, and I'm very proud of them.
That is fantastic. Now, also, you didn't want to talk about it too much, but you have a Dream Foundation?
I do. The Turner Dream Foundation was created to actually provide funding for programs like the STEM program, programs that involve children. This is a family foundation, and we fund it primarily out of our own money each year. We have accepted some contributions, but primarily each year we contribute to it. My sons are officers in it, and we decide on the programs that we will support each year.
Well, that's fantastic. And so now, that Link program, you don't have to be a member of the Links to.
No, as a matter of fact, I don't think we have any children in it that are members from the Links.
Oh, okay.
We take children from all over the community.
Okay. Well, look, incredibly, I'm looking at the clock, and we're just about out of time. Now, your firm, if there's folks out there listening who who may need your services, how would they get in touch with you?
Oh, it's very easy. Just look up Wilson Turner Cosmo, and we will pop up when you Google. It's amazing.
I tell you, folks, you have been enlightened by one of the most fantastic attorneys in town. I am so proud she took the time to come visit with us tonight. There are, and I'm proud to say, we have, there are some good African American attorneys in town. And on the top of the food chain is none other than Vicki Turner, and I appreciate you coming out. Much
This has
love to
been
you.
wonderful. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for tonight. Thank you for the show. We'll see you soon with Law and Money with attorney Doug Oden and my co-host, Michael Allen. He'll be back soon enough.